This is your host, David Jenness. I am awfully glad that you're joining us for Automation Exposé. If you haven't heard of it before, it is the brainchild, let's use that word, the brainchild of our North American user groups, Midwest, New England, New York, public sector. They all have struggled in the last 2 years to figure out how to be valuable to their members. And one of the requests that I was very happy to take on was, can we have a regular series where a practitioner, an architect, a designer, a project manager shows us a solution that they built and tells us how they built it or the gory details, and then takes questions. And this is a very simple concept, and that's what we're doing today. We are going to focus on a wonderful story at Primanti Brothers. And our special guest today, Jimmy Hewitt, is the man. He not only got them to invest in it, and it's a fun story about how that got started, but he has been every step of the way part of it. And so he is the right man for us today. He is an automation specialist for sure. He's also a very good public speaker. And I will proudly say that we have had a very high standard of presentations in the Automation Exposé series, and I fully anticipate that the standards will be upheld by Mr. Jimmy Hewitt. Now, a lot of times we think about the outcomes of automation, the business outcomes, the benefits to the company. And so I just want us to consider in this story, the outcome is a heck of a good-looking sandwich.
And a cold beer.
So let's not forget what we're doing here. And I'm glad it's before lunch. Primanti Brothers, as we will hear, out of Pittsburgh, invented this sumptuous-looking sandwich for the steel workers to come and make sure that they had all the energy they needed to go back to work. And then it's grown and become quite a significant chain in the Midwest, Ohio, Pennsylvania area. I know there's some Florida and some other spots as well, but it's a fun thing. So that's what we're gonna talk about, the behind the scenes automation that makes this sandwich possible. But I also want to let you know about next month, I'm sorry, the third Thursday of every month, Automation Exposé. We will be featuring our business partner and choice, and Mr. Dan Hesselbarth, who is their VP of Digital Transformation. George Warner actually researched and said, boy, this would be a great one for us. And our scheduled June needed to bump to July. And so I quickly got nChoice on the phone, and they are very happy to join us in June 16th at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, just like we're doing today, to look at their crime victim compensation system. And it's got all the elements in it that we know and love: document capture, content, case management. There's workflows in here and a lot of other interesting features. The other thing to think about is that this may be a public sector application, but you'll see very easily that it could be expanded or extended to other industries. So I'm looking forward to this one, and hope you'll join us for that. And thank you, George, for helping put that together for us. So we're going to talk about robotic process automation today as sort of the main technology. And I always like to bring this up, and this is about the end of my part, that this is a exploding industry. There's a lot of investment flowing into these companies. And there's a lot of interesting applications starting to emerge, great use cases. We're going to look at one today that is a pretty classic use case for the finance system, back office processing. But what's really interesting is that, as George and others have said, what you want to do is get an early quick win so that the whole organization understands the value and then starts to ask for automation. That's exactly what happened at Primanti Brothers. And of course, most of you know about the IBM Automation Platform. It has robotic process automation in it, as well as all these other pieces, capture, workflow, decision management. This is IBM's strategy, that it's all here in one place for you all to use and to build with. And it sits on a foundation that has other things that are available to it. Some of the natural language understanding capabilities that we've seen in fact, the last two automation exposés. And that's cool. And all right, my VPN just stopped, but I don't think that'll affect us. And
Still good.
yes, it's all good. Okay, good.
Mhm.
So just so that if you don't understand this, most people do. This is a user group, and so a lot of of our customers know about this. But I just wanted to review that RPA is a significant piece of the whole entire platform. And with that, it is time now for me to get out of the way, and hopefully, yeah, that should be it. That's the last of my slides. So I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to give a nice big warm round of welcome to Jimmy Hewitt from Salient Process.
Thank you so much, David. And hello, IBM Automation community. I'm very excited to be here with you all today. Thanks so much for inviting me into your community. I think it's great what David and team are doing to nurture a really great community of IBM automation practitioners. Let's jump right in. What we're going to talk about today over the next 25 minutes is just a moment about me, right? I hope to establish a bit of a baseline of credibility with the community here before we jump into Primanti Brothers. A little bit of pretext, a little bit of context leading up to their first bot, which we'll detail. And then the results of that first bot, what happened after that first bot, and how to stay curious and stay connected. All right. Jumping right in. Just a little bit about myself. I am a hyperautomation nerd. All right, guys. To the point where some people call me Mr. Automation. I'm a podcast host on the topic of hyperautomation, a senior automation advisor with Salient Process and IBM business partner. I'm a process improvement trainer, and I've been doing exactly this for the last 8 years. Speaking of Salient's podcast, it's called Bots and Thoughts, the Hyperautomation Podcast. And if episodes like the titles that I'm showing here are of any interest to you, then I hope you check it out. I hope you follow it, subscribe with notifications so that you don't miss a future episode. That is about me. Now about Primanti Brothers. Like David said, a staple of Pittsburgh. Has anybody, maybe either by comments or show of hands or some sort of remote virtual way of saying yes or no, has anybody here heard of Primanti Brothers? I saw a thumbs up from Alan, a yes from Praveen, a yes from Allison. I'm getting some no's in there. Okay, well, you live in Italy. So I'm seeing, okay, some people have heard of it. This is good. They have actually trademarked the almost famous phrase. They've been around since 1933. And as David mentioned, their sole purpose was to service the steel workers of Pittsburgh. My favorite part about the Primanti Brothers' origin story is that they noticed that these steel workers in the 1930s Pittsburgh area didn't have a lot of time to sit down and eat lunch. So what they did is they put the coleslaw and the fries inside the sandwich. That's what they're almost famous for. And I thought, what a nice segue into a discussion on hyperautomation. They literally automated lunch. Okay, so that is about Primanti Brothers. A little bit of context leading up to what we're here to talk about, which is IBM RPA, is that like many industries, the restaurant industry was hit pretty hard coming out of the pandemic. They had to reallocate their resources to literally keeping the lights on. Kind of like our human system will reallocate blood to our heart and our brain when it gets cold outside. Um, that's what this company did. They reallocated their resources to things like delivery, takeout, and quite literally keeping the lights on. So what happens with a reallocation of resources is that somebody or some teams lose them. And that's what happened to their finance team, operations, and even some in-store managers were asked to do more with literally less. All right. And what's ironic about that is the same folks who lost some resources were the same folks who were being asked to do more by way of mostly reporting on what is the impact of this reallocation of resources. Uh, Daily P&Ls, daily sales reports, uh, how paradoxical, right? The same teams who were losing resources were being asked to do more. Classic do more with less. Classic stuck between a rock and a hard place. Something had to give. They were stuck. Something had to give. So I actually met the director of finance at Primanti Brothers living here in Pittsburgh. That's where I have a home here. Um, and we got to talking. And after I heard the situation, being Mr. Automation, I couldn't help myself but offer just if it helps, and the same offer to everyone here in the community is if it helps, I'd love to show you an idea I have for how to solve this problem. Not just solve this problem, but establish a positive value creation system that not only solves your problem, but returns value month after month, year after year. And thankfully, that's exactly what we did. A little bit about the bot. You can see this is what the day in the life looked like for the store managers whose morning we automated with this one bot. Effectively, since it's a restaurant model, and the same could apply to retail stores, right? If there's retail folks out there, or really any kind of financial reporting and even supply chain reporting, any kind of reporting, I think you could easily draw the connections to. But for Primanti Brothers, they use NCR, National Cash Register, to understand how much did we sell yesterday by location. Not only how much did we sell, but how much did we spend on labor specifically for this bot. So what that looks like is they have 40 locations. Their store managers are responsible for running these reports by 9 a.m. every morning, 365 days a year, because it's a bar and restaurant open every day of the week. So quite literally, 8 store managers responsible for 5 stores each are logging into NCR, going to the report tab, selecting the parameters on the report, which restaurant, what dates, downloading the report to their desktop. An Excel sheet flashes open on their computer. They find the data they need. They copy it and paste it into the monthly forecasting spreadsheet. They close the sales report down, do the same thing for labor. Find the data they need, copy it, paste it, close it, and then repeat for the 4 other restaurants that they're responsible for. This was 45 minutes per day, every day, that the managers just accepted as truth, as part of their job. It's kind of funny what happens after, right? Because they no longer have to do this because of the bot, right? The bot does all of this now. So it quite literally gave them 45 minutes per day, every day, forever. So that, may surprise some folks, or depending on if you've seen a demo of RPA, it's quite special seeing it happen for the first time, assuming certain things, which we'll get into in a bit. It just works. It works every time. It's a computer. There have been no errors reported because of the bot. A little bit of human, touching a report they shouldn't have, but there was some disbelief the first week, the second week, the third week. They continued to check the report that the bot delivered on a timer every morning at 7 a.m. And time after time, it was error-free. So now they have accepted it as a new part of the team, this digital worker, right? So does this sound familiar? does this report sound familiar? Whether finance or supply chain or operations or your managers. Specifically, what this means to Primanti's is not only did it solve the problem, right? It provided the relief that the managers needed, but it specifically gave each manager over 5 hours per week. What would you do with 5 hours per week, right? Maybe you're getting back down into the normal 40-hour work week. Yes, so that is a bit about what the first bot did, and depending on if you've seen a bot or not, I did want to make sure that the community here saw a sub 3-minute video of the IBM RPA bot in action. So please give me one moment to share my browser. And either David or someone, please let me know if you can hear my screen.
Here we go. You can see it. Yep.
And hear it?
And hear it, yes.
Great.
Meet Anna. Finance is her forte. But the work isn't always fun. Every week, she builds a report that includes expenses from all the invoices across our company's entire finance management system. It's a lot. Sometimes the invoices are PDFs created from digital files, but sometimes they're just scanned paper invoices. Entering them and creating the reports takes lots of valuable time away from more crucial work, and the manual repetition means errors could be right around the corner. Thanks to IBM Robotic Process Automation with AI-driven bots, she now can automate her reports and lots of other repetitive tasks too. Her first step is to activate IBM RPA Studio, a place where she can easily create automation scripts. Scripts contain the steps that tells the bot what it needs to do. RPA Studio has a host of simple-to-use tools to help automate different types of tasks. Anna easily builds her bot by dragging and dropping commands from the Studio's toolbox onto the script design surface. RPA commands have instructions that clarify what her bot will execute. Anna adds a command for her bot to specify the folder containing the PDFs it needs to process. She then grabs the data she needs from the PDF using optical character recognition, or OCR. Anna can also use the recorder to add commands to her script by recording them in the finance management system. When recording starts, IBM RPA automatically adds commands to Anna's script based on the steps she takes in her browser. When she is done recording, Anna can make extra tweaks to her script if she needs to. And done. After publishing the bot, the script is stored in the cloud and can be reused as needed. It also becomes a resource available to other users. Anna can start her bot whenever she needs it, and the bot takes care of the rest. A task that would take Anna hours, even days to complete, is done in minutes.
Here it goes.
All she has to do is click a button. Now, while the bot takes care of the repetitive functions, Anna can focus on high-value work. You know, the stuff that puts the fun in finance.
I do think IBM missed an opportunity by saying that Anna's now putting the fun in finance, or RPA is putting the fun in finance. They could have said RPA is now putting the P and A back into FP&A. But I guess that's why I'm not a marketing person.
As I understand it, Jimmy, they didn't want to share their own data, Primanti Brothers, but the app is essentially what we just looked at, right? I mean, in terms of what you built.
Yep. So NDA purposes, I wasn't able to show you the Primanti Brothers bot pulling the report, but I found an IBM RPA video, the same platform, doing a similar use case in the finance department, where they're extracting data off of an invoice. So that was the user experience. The platform is getting some pretty solid ratings, peer ratings actually, user group like yourselves ratings from Trust Radius and others. But okay, that was the first bot. I'd like to kind of pause for a moment before we get into what happens next and talk about an initial takeaway from that first bot. What did we learn? And how can teams approaching their first bot maybe benefit from this and stand on the shoulders of all the RPA practitioners that have come before you? The overarching point here on the first bot is to thread the needle between innovation and governance. What does that mean? Governance, red tape, can stifle innovation if there's too much of it. And conversely, innovation can lead to shadow IT, runaway spend, and a whole host of problems if there isn't enough governance. So threading the needle for your first bot between innovation and governance is the takeaway. But what does that look like? We have a pilot checklist, your first bot checklist. If it meets some or all of these 5 items, then do it. Is the task repeatable, right? Is it manual? Are you keying in information from one side of your screen to the next? Are you copying and pasting data like these restaurant managers did at Primanti's? Does it happen a lot? Is it an everyday report? Is it an every week report? Is this person or are these teams under pressure? Does something need to give? And of course, my favorite is, does this make sense? Sometimes looking past just a pure ROI may be enough of a reason to invest in things like employee experience or customer experience. So this is a checklist to be used. This checklist does thread the needle between innovation and governance. It's IBM, so feel free to kick the InfoSec tires. That's also governance, but assuming that we're good InfoSec wise, this is how we thread the needle between innovation and governance. All right. Before we move into what happened next, I did want to share one more brief clip with you all. This is from the Primanti's Director of Finance. Please confirm that you can see and hear.
I can see.
If you had to boil down your
Yes.
hyperautomation experience, or maybe this first bot, to 1 or 2 words, what would they be?
Relief.
Relief. That's a great one.
It's been a huge relief for me with all these data hungry coworkers and operations, that we have a solution. We can get you what you need and want.
Great. I'll save the rest for those who are going to go check out Bots and Thoughts, the Hyperautomation Podcast, brought to you by Salient Process. Let me jump back.
I put your links in the chat, Jimmy, so that if anybody wants to grab those, copy and paste and check it out later.
Thank you so much, David. Okay, so we're back to the PowerPoint. Can you see this?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so what happened after this first bot? What happened is an effect called the can we do this, can we do that, or can we automate this, can we automate that effect started to happen, where dozens of ideas came in. The first dozen came from the finance and operations department. But the next wave is now over 60 of can we automate this, can we automate that, from outside of finance, HR, IT, other in-store use cases. So that is going to happen after your first bot, right? You're going to find some success if you use the checklist criteria. And this can we do this, can we do that effect starts to happen. They wanted to automate 12 more. And this is where we as advisors came in and said, before we just automate 12 more, let's establish a bit more stringent, just a dash more governance, right? Since we're moving past the first bot, we're now into the second, third, fourth, fifth. Let's create some prioritization criteria. We worked together and isolated a number of prioritization criterias. The top three were customer experience. They call their restaurant goers fans. So customer experience. Does this help or hurt customer experience? Next was employee experience. Their employees are called coaches, right? I think it's playing on a Pittsburgh sports city metaphor here. Next is ROI. Does it make financial sense to do this? And then there were a handful of other benefits. One of them is this annoying? For right or wrong, everyone's prioritization criteria is going to be different from another's. But I do want to say that this is just painful. I don't like doing this. This seems like a very low value thing for me and my team to be doing with our time when there's other things we could and should be doing. Is just as valid of a reason to automate as pure play hard dollar ROI return. All right. So establish your prioritization criteria. That's what we did. We took those 12 processes through what we call a process mapping and analysis sprint, where you can see in the top right-hand corner, we map out processes in BlueWorks Live. I'm not sure if some folks are familiar with that process mapping platform of IBM's, but it's a nice SaaS-based process mapping platform that we used to map out those 12 processes, enriched with data and metadata like work time, wait time, problems, systems that come up. And we actually crunched those processes and the data behind the map through a tool that we've developed called the Automation Compass. And if we have time towards the end of the presentation, I'd love to actually pull up the Automation Compass and give you a bit of a live demo if we have time. But here's one screen from the Automation Compass that shows the difference or the delta in work time, cycle time, and cost across different processes. So we're comparing the relative benefit of automating this versus that. We compile the results across these 12 processes, across not just pure cost repurposing or ROI, but also those other prioritization criteria. Another one was, is this system going away? We lose points, right, if this automation touches a system that's going away, as an example. So at the end, you get an equally scientific as artistic, right, equal parts art and science list of use cases. And one of my favorite parts about this is that it actually wasn't 12 bots that we did next, that we're doing next. We've actually got the list down to 7. So what does that mean? Rather than jumping in or aping into 12 bots because you had success with your first one, applying just a bit of prioritization criteria, just a bit of mapping and analysis has really increased the effectiveness of phase 2. We're doing the right 7. Right. And, there's another screen at the bottom of the pipeline that we use to manage our current bots and our future bots. So this generated a lot of excitement, clearly a lot of results. They're getting some publicity at this very moment. IBM has done another write-up about them. They're on the podcast. So from a 1930s era Pittsburgh-based bar and restaurant is now on the bleeding edge of hyperautomation. That's pretty cool. And the same, can happen for your companies as well. And a lot of relief, like you heard with the snippet from the podcast. All right. So that actually is all I had today by way of slideware. This is actually a QR code to my calendar. If you're curious and want to stay connected, you can actually pull your phone up, and if you do scan this QR code on the left-hand side of your screen, then what you'll see is my calendar in real time. You can pick a day that works for you, pick a time that works for you, and I would love to hear any light bulb, any ideas that you may have had during this presentation, depending on where you're at in your hyperautomation journey. Maybe you have seen bots in your organization. Maybe it's a very mature practice. Maybe you have 100 bots running. Maybe you have success from one pilot bot and you're looking into evaluation criteria, would love to chat with you about that. Maybe you're in the discovery and research phase, haven't deployed a bot to production yet, and you're looking for just a chat on that, some advice or guidance on that. No, or maybe you've never heard of RPA. Either way, this is what I do. This is what we do at Salient Processes. We talk with folks interested in automating their business, improving their customer experience, employee experience, repurposing low value work to higher value tasks, just like Primanti Brothers. Now those store managers are touching tables. They're interfacing with customers an extra 5 hours a week, which I think is pretty cool. So that is all I had. And at this time, I'd love to open it up for questions.
Absolutely, Jimmy. This has really been very interesting, and as I say, it's a great example of how success breeds more success. I'm going to let everybody know that they can come off mute by clicking on the red icon, microphone icon. When it turns green, that means you can talk. I'd love it if you put your camera on too, just to make it a little bit more intimate. You can also submit in the chat if that's something you prefer to do. Jimmy is here and available, and we have ourselves some time, and this is a great chance. I'm going to give you one question to get started because I'm interested in that analysis process with the BlueWorks Live. Who was on the other side of the table from Primanti? I've got to figure, you talked about finance, but there's operations people. There's probably a number of different personas that were part of that exploration. Can you give us a little bit clearer picture there of who was at the table?
Sure. So we have a team of nearshore analysts that are very good at what they do. These are industrial engineer type folks who sit down for about an hour, sometimes 2 hours, depending on how complex the process is, with whoever knows the process that we're mapping out cold. You could call that a process owner. You could call that an SME, a subject matter expert. You could call it a longtime employee, right? So they sit down with, in this case, it was a finance manager who does a lot of these reports on a daily basis. So call them a subject matter expert in the process that we're mapping. Sit down for an hour or two and just have a conversation. The analyst does have BlueWorks Live pulled up, and they say, hey, what does this process look like? How does it start? How frequently does it happen? On what interval? What are the steps that happen along the way? That's the happy path. Okay, what are the variations that happen? Are there sad paths? Are there exceptions? They enrich this process map during this interview with all the data and metadata we've spoken about: work time, wait time, systems, problems, whatever is important to the analysis that they're looking for are the data points that will be collected. It's not too much time on the SME's plate. The analyst will then go back to their office virtually and organize all the data that they've collected and set a playback meeting, as we call them, for whenever the subject matter expert's available, hopefully the next day. Say, hey, here's what I heard. Is this what your process looks like? And typically after 2 meetings, we've got the process down. I've seen it take 3, where it's actually 60 minutes, not 45. This actually happens here. So after a playback or 2, we have that process mapped out, and we can move on to the next and next and next and next. And a little plug for our process analysts is that they can typically do about 3 years worth of process mapping in about 3 months. So it's but there's some teams that have their own teams of process analysts, right? We work with a number of teams that have 5, 10, 50 process analysts and operational excellence folks on their team who are doing a very similar mapping workshop, if you will, with their business clients. So it's whatever your kind of situation is you could use our analysts or use your own. Does that help answer the
Oh,
question, David?
absolutely. Yeah. I just wanted to get a clearer picture of this part of it because I think that's, that's the collaboration and that's where the rubber meets the road. Let me call upon some of our user group leaders who are behind the scenes here on this. Maybe Michael, maybe George, come off mute, say hello, hit Jimmy up with a good question, please.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
Good.
Jimmy, nice presentation. Question for you. If you're saving 45 minutes per day or an hour per day per manager, what were they able to do with that free time that they weren't able to do before? And did
Yes.
that additional time reflect anywhere in the P&L of the restaurant?
Yeah, so tough to reflect on a P&L, but good question. What these restaurant managers are doing with their 45 minutes per day is attributed to the customer experience line item, if you will. Rather than sitting in their office in front of their computer inside the restaurant, it's hard to put a value on managers touching tables, right? If you've been to a restaurant and the manager has come and touched your table and asked how your experience is going and if they can get you anything, that is quite literally what these managers are doing for an extra 2,160 hours per year.
Thank you.
Yes, good question. But where is that on a balance sheet? It's hard to find. That's why when evaluating bots, it's just as much of an art and a science. It's a multifaceted prioritization criteria. ROI is definitely part of it, right? But it's not just ROI. And
Yeah,
I hope that makes sense.
It's your return on service that you get by having additional time. It's your ROS.
You got it. Since we're talking retail, call center agents are plagued with not enough time as well. So 12 minutes to handle your question versus 2 minutes to handle your question. That's also hard to find on a P&L, but it's customer experience. And that was the thing that Primanti's wanted to optimize for this particular use case.
One of your other criteria was employee experience, though. Do you have any anecdotes there about employees saying, "Thank God I don't have to do these stupid reports every morning"?
It was really cool going to their office downtown here in the weeks after the bot went live, the first bot. It wasn't a standing ovation, right? It's just 45 minutes a day. But there were some, you're the bot guy, you're the Mr. Automation, thank you. And you can hear it from Caitlin in the podcast there. It was very well received from an employee experience perspective. Definitely.
Nice. I'll remain quiet for a moment and hopefully we'll get another question from our audience.
So this is Michael.
It's Eric. Oh, okay. Michael Custard first, and then we've got one right after Michael. Thanks.
So I'm in the state of Minnesota. We're working with IBM right now on a garage project that's RPA focused. We're trying to deploy it on Azure Red Hat OpenShift, and it's become particularly challenging. It's new to us. The whole Azure and Red Hat OpenShift, the whole thing is brand new to us. That's part of it. So I'm kind of curious what platform you deployed there in that instance and what kind of challenges you had with that.
Sure. So we deployed to their data center on their VMs, right? So not a public cloud, their data center, their virtualized machine. The bot was deployed on a server that had other applications running on it. This actually affected the timer, the performance of the timer. So every morning at 7 a.m. running this report. So what we did is we moved the bot into its own VM, which was relatively painless. And from there, it has been working like clockwork. So that's where we deployed it. That was a challenge and how we solved it. Does that help?
Yep. And your VM was Windows or Linux? Just kind of curiosity.
I want to say Windows. I'm 95% confident, but I'm not 100% sure.
Fair enough. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Hi, Jimmy. This is Eric. Thanks for such an amazing presentation. So I'm kind of very interested in how you prioritized, when to use a bot. And I think in the last step, you said something about does it make sense, right? So I will assume that what makes sense will depend on the process and also on the client. Can you talk a little bit more how you are able to identify what makes sense?
Sure. A couple ways to take that. The first is how this first bot came to be at Primanti's in particular. We actually had a handful of use cases to run for our first batch. But thankfully the CFO came in right before he executed the contract and said, we're gonna do this use case. Yes, sir, will do. And it turned out to be a really good one. He used his gut to say, this is where the manual effort is. This is where the pain is. Find a way to automate why my restaurant managers are spending 45 minutes per day in front of their computer when they should be, in this case, figuring out the delivery and takeout and pickup challenge during the pandemic. So that was a gut feeling that is perfectly valid for your first bot. And on the other side, a gut feeling that I've heard recently is this isn't a possible use case. It involves going into emails and routing different requests for service based on the intent of those emails. Surely this isn't something that you can automate. Little did they know they were talking with Mr. Automation, and that the IBM RPA platform can use artificial intelligence, natural language processing to understand the intent of different emails coming into a general support at company XYZ inbox and route those requests to the correct department based on intent. So in one case, the first example with the Primanti CFO, the gut feel was right on, and it led to a very successful first bot. But in the second case, the gut feel wasn't quite right on. And a simple demonstration of, it's 2022, these bots are getting pretty sophisticated, can prove a gut feel wrong. So that's kind of both sides of the coin in terms of what I mean by, does it make sense? Use your gut feel. It's kind of like going into a doctor with some knee pain, and rather than treating the knee, they say, well, let's take a step back and x-ray your entire body. Let's go through CAT scans, MCATs, and C scans. That's not what we mean to do with the process mapping and analysis sprint. Sometimes if your knee hurts, automate it, right? But once your knee is solved, then we can take a step back and take a broader approach across a broader breadth of processes and do more of an x-ray of your department or your business. That's where mining can come in and make that process a lot more painless. Combining mining with mapping in analysis are some elements that are coming to mind. But yes, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. Helped.
Jimmy, I'm going to interject one because I was impressed at the speed of this whole thing, and in fact put in the title here, Rapid Automation, because many of the folks in the user groups that are here today are used to projects taking 3 months, 6 months, multi-years sometimes to roll out big projects. And so give us a sense of the timeline of the first one. And then now that you've got kind of a green light to move forward, what's your anticipation for rolling out the future ones, just from a time perspective?
Sure. Great question. That is one of my other favorite parts about this success story, is how quickly we were able to stand this bot up, including install, configuration, programming, everything end to end. It took us 80 hours of development time, 2 weeks. That's pretty fast, right? Granted, we did soft launch after that 80 hours and just kind of watched the bot do its reporting on a daily basis for the 1 week after those 80 hours. It was a soft launch. You know, we worked out a bug or two before we hard launched. So call it 3 weeks from end to end, including testing. So that's pretty fast, right?
Hang on. Include the discovery period. How long was discovery?
Sure, that did include discovery. It was a reverse demo. The client pulled up their screen and we watched them log in with their username and password to ncr.com, navigate to the report tab, select the parameters, restaurant and date, run the report. We watched, them show us what the bot was going to do for them. So discovery was pretty quick. It was a 30-minute screen share.
So in 2 weeks, it was live.
80 hours of development. The fine print there, George, is that this particular RPA developer was working on other projects. So instead of a fully loaded 40 hours a week, it was 20 hours a week. So calendar time, it was 1 month, but development wise, it was 80 hours. So not to get too deep into the weeds there.
No, we're all listening and we're all mapping it to our experiences doing other things. So,
Yep,
that's pretty cool.
Pretty hard to believe until you've gone through it yourself. And to that point, that's why we recorded Primanti's talking about their experience with our podcast. So again, really encourage everyone to go check out Bots and Thoughts and to not take it from me, to take it from them. Other kind of information time-wise is the 3 months that it took to pay for itself, right? If you can grab an estimated hourly rate for these restaurant managers times how much time we're saving them, which is about 6 hours a day, this bot paid for itself in about 3 months, which is, to me, just as startling of an ROI. And ever since that 3 month and 1 day, it's been pure value to the organization. And it will continue to deliver that like clockwork.
Since you can track how often the bots are executed, has there been any thought about making it a subscription basis?
Subscription basis. Yep.
Every time the bot executes it, it's a cost of X.
That's interesting. No, I quite like that. If we're talking about cost and billing and licensing, IBM licensed by the bot. And the cool thing about it, and a differentiator, if I may, to the community, is that rather than continuing to purchase unattended bot after bot after bot after bot for the first use case, second use case, third use case, fourth use case, what you get is time with your IBM RPA bot. So since this only takes 3 minutes to run from 7 a.m. to 7:03 a.m., they actually have 24 hours minus 3 minutes of capacity left on this one license. So they are using this one license for the next 7 bots. I hope that also helps the community, since we're talking about licensing and billing.
Yeah, that all becomes the magic aside, that becomes part of the dirty part of this business. We got to pay for it.
Definitely.
No, but I like all the different perspectives we're digging in here, and I don't think anybody's stumped Jimmy yet. So
I'm sure they're out there.
We've got a couple minutes more.
That's not the topic.
No, it's very cool. As you go forward, we showed the platform before. A lot of folks on here are using workflow, and they're using document capture, and they're using some heavy duty automation stuff. do you think Primanti Brothers has other opportunities for a broader, they got to take them slow. Obviously, this is new to them, but do you see this thing growing in different directions, or do you think RPA will be all they need?
You can hear it in the podcast, David. The attitude has definitely changed. They're very warm and open to automation, which is kind of unlike a lot of, call it Western Pennsylvania, Eastern Ohio, classic Midwest sentiment towards automation. There's different types of automation, and what we're talking about here is providing relief where it's needed. The attitude is very warm towards automation, including those who, are affected by it. These restaurant managers were affected by automation in all the best ways. So yes, I think there's a very positive attitude towards not just RPA, but other automation capabilities. We are a big fan of automation paying for itself. So as you progress along your hyperautomation journey, other capabilities come into play, like workflow, if we have any BAW users out there, or capture, if we have any data cap users out there, content management and decision automation. It's all about, does it make sense based on a handful of criteria, right? And here's 8 criteria in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. I'd say if it makes sense, then I'd estimate a pretty solid likelihood of Primanti's taking advantage of that automation, right? They're squarely in the can we automate this, can we automate that effect. And yeah, but again, I think we should just let the process tell us if the particular process could benefit from infusing capture at the front end of an invoice processing system, or managing your employee background check with workflow. It's all about, how long does it take you to do? How manual is it? Can the technology even do it? We have some customers that have created 30% capacity for a new customer onboarding without automation, just by mapping it out and analyzing it, looking at it, moving some things around without automation. So it's all about what is the process map telling us, I think, is my roundabout answer.
It's a good one, though, and it kind of points to the methodology, and and that's been a lot of the discussions that we've had on Automation Exposé and other user group type gatherings, which is great. We love hearing what the software does, but how do you succeed? How do you make it really work the way it should? And it has all these elements in it that you've been covering for us so well. So time for another question.
Yes.
At least one more. You can come off mute. You can put it in the chat. I haven't seen any new. Wait. Process mining is based on existing data. The Automation Compass helps you. I think he may be answering. Kyle is answering. What about process mining? I see. Yeah. So you've got a nice kind of middle ground where, if you've got everything hooked up to your Oracle databases and all of your different business systems, process mining gives you a great snapshot. If you're kind of working in a lot of this sort of manual area, that data isn't available, right? So you kind of have to do this process. So
yeah,
kind of an interesting middle piece there. Sorry, I was just going through the chat to make sure everybody gets their question in.
Yeah. Any other questions? I could provide my point of view on process mining.
Just want to make sure this is your last chance with Jimmy. Maybe you're already as hungry as I am from talking about sandwiches, but
Hey,
this has been
Jimmy.
great. Here we go.
Hey, Jimmy.
Yeah, hey,
Kyle.
Kyle.
How are you, man?
Hello.
Good to see you
Great,
again.
man.
Listen,
You
I
as
would
well.
like to hear your take on process mining
Great.
with
So it's
regard to
top
the
down and
compass.
bottom up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's top down and bottom up, right? The these subject matter experts that we're interviewing sometimes they have rose tinted lenses on when they explain how the process works today, right? You can see that being the case. On the other hand, process mining, because it is nothing more, nothing less than the analysis of system log data from whatever system, your ERP, your CRM, and the translation of that log data into a process map. What does that miss? It misses the phone call that you did to progress this review or approve. So both process mapping and process mining miss things, right? They're both great in their own right, but they both miss things. They complement each other quite well because the process map does collect the phone call, but it may miss, is it really 20 minutes or is it more like 45? We can look at the system event data for start time and end time, and your Outlook will tell me that it was actually 45 minutes. So, who are you really serving by saying it's a 20-minute step when it's really a 45-minute step? So marrying mapping with mining, and the automation compass is built to do that. I hope everyone checks it out. Is my take. It's not one, it's not the other. The truth is in the middle. Find a way to lay one on top of the other to give you the truth, or as close as we can come to the truth. That's my take on process mining. Y'all have been great.
You've been great, Jimmy. Thank you. Would you go to that Salient slide? I want to just make sure that Salient Process gets our thanks for making you available and for being such a great business partner and for participating in Automation Exposé. We work together on a lot of cool things, and I look forward to doing more of that. But as it says here, you can see a little bit about the company as you go around the circle. As I say, wonderful partner, and you guys are doing cool things. And this is just the latest of a really wonderful series that our user groups have envisioned and we've been able to pull off so far. And as I said, I think I was anticipating that Jimmy would be a wonderful guest, and he was even better than that. Mr. Automation, take a bow. Take a bow.
Thank you so much, David. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, IBM Automation community. Y'all been great. And don't forget to stay connected, stay curious, and happy automating.
We'll leave it at that. That's a great last word. Happy automating. Now let's get lunch.